Hello and welcome to Everyday Tarot, your daily dive into the divine wisdom of the tarot. I'm your host, Camille A. Saunders, healer, tarot enthusiast, and professional witch, and today I'm talking about Professor Trelawney in the Harry Potter series. Whether you're a seasoned tarot reader or just starting to explore, this podcast offers daily insights, intuitive messages, and practical advice drawn from the cards. Each episode is designed to help you connect with your inner wisdom, find clarity in your decisions, and tap into the energy of the universe. Tune in every day, Monday through Friday, for fresh perspectives and empowering guidance from the tarot as interpreted by me. If you love the show, the best way to support it for free is by listening daily, leaving a review, and subscribing or following in your favorite podcast app. If you're interested in crafting your own tarot cards, you can go ahead and get my full workshop, including the hour-long recording with my step-by-step method, examples of the tarot cards I've created, journaling questions, and a PDF to walk you through it for just $33. The link is in the show notes to purchase that now. Starting at the end of this summer, I am offering a 12-week Tarot for Transformation live course. If you're interested, you can sign up for more info on that as well. I just updated my Patreon benefits to be bigger and better than ever, so if you want an individual card pulled for you once a month live on the podcast during my New Moon Collective Tarot readings, join the Everyday Tarot Patreon family at the Lovers level. If you'd like to support the podcast even further, you can get a one-time individual 5-card reading in addition to all the other benefits if you join the Witch Bitch level on the Patreon. If you're local to the greater Puget Sound area, join us at our next Let's Talk Tarot meetup group event. And if you're interested in joining my newsletter, you will get a free PDF with a 2025 5-card tarot spread I created just for you, my lovely listeners, at the beginning of this year. My weekly newsletter always has the most up-to-date information on upcoming events, presentations, musings, and more. And if you don't already know, I am a sex and relationships therapist and coach, seeing clients virtually all over from my home office. I love working with queer, poly, and witchy clients. If you'd like to work with someone that doesn't judge you, is witchy, just like you, and helps you learn how to deal with anxiety, chronic pain or illness, communication issues, self-advocacy, and sex, head to my website and book a free consultation now to start your journey. You can find the links for any of these offers in the show notes or on my website, CamilleASaunders.com/everydaytarot, in addition to the images of the cards I pull on each episode. Alright, so welcome to season 13, where I'm talking all about divination in the Harry Potter series. If you haven't listened to my other seasons yet, you can check those out. In season 1, I talked tarot basics. In seasons 2 and 3, I went through all the major arcana cards and an overview of the 4 suits. In season 4, I talked tarot and pop culture, where I did an intro episode on Harry Potter and also on Professor Trelawney. So we'll be going more in depth today and talking about her relation, her history, her background, how she shows up in the series, and things like that. In season 5, I went through 13 common tarot spreads. In season 6, I went through the suit of wands, pentacles, in season 6, 7, 8, and 9, I covered all the suits, starting with wands, then pentacles, swords, and cups. In season 10, I talked tarot and witchcraft. Season 11, tarot and plant allies. And I just wrapped up season 12, talking about tarot and animals. So like I said, we are on to season 13, where I'm talking about divination in the Harry Potter series. And today we're talking about Professor Trelawney. So, before we get into a history on Sybill Trelawney, we'll talk about me a bit and my background with the Harry Potter series. I grew up reading all the books from elementary school on. We read them as a family. My parents read them to us when we were young, and then as we got older, we read them on our own, or I even read them on my own and then would still listen to my parents and didn't give any spoilers even when I knew what would happen. I identify as being in Slytherin house. My favorite book is Half-Blood Prince. My favorite movie is Goblet of Fire. I've been a MuggleCast podcast listener since 2006. They kicked off their podcast in 2005, talking all things Harry Potter, analyzing the books and everything before they were all out. And they just celebrated their 20th year of podcasting, which was wild. And they were definitely a big influence in wanting to start my own podcast. And today, for talking about my favorite professor, since we're talking about Professor Trelawney today, I'm going to try to do like a reclaiming Professor Trelawney, episode right now, but I loved Lupin as a professor, and honestly Firenze, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a later episode. but the Ferenzi is a centaur, and later on in the series became an alternative, like the alternative divination teacher. So we'll get into a history on Sybill Trelawney, do some analyzing, talk divination in the books, classes. We see Trelawney's predictions, how she teaches, and kind of some conclusions from there. So we're talking all things Professor Trelawney today. So let's get into a history, because I think this is very interesting. And we don't really learn much about her history in the books. We just hear from Dumbledore that she came from a history of like famous seers, basically. So Sybill Trelawney is descended from Cassandra Trelawney, who is a famous seer. And there is speculation, so Trelawney may have been Cassandra's married name, since her great-great-granddaughter shares the surname. So it's possible that Cassandra was a single mother or simply did not take her husband's name. But if that was true, then Cassandra Trelawney may have been Cassandra Voblotsky before she got married. And that is the author of the book in the series, Unfogging the Future, the textbook that is used in books in year 3. So that's super interesting. That would maybe potentially Trelawney, Sybill Trelawney is teaching from, a book written by her great-great-grandmother, a famous seer. So yeah, I guess I'll keep going into Cassandra's history and then Sybill's, and then we'll get more into what happens in the books that we actually see. So if we think about etymology, so Cassandra, the name just in general is taken to mean she who entangles men. This meaning came from Greek culture and was translated to mean various other things as well, such as oracle. In Greek mythology, Cassandra was a princess of Troy. Her beauty caused Apollo to grant her the gift of prophecy. However, when she did not return his love, Apollo placed a curse on her so that no one would ever believe her predictions. And this is super interesting as we get into, again, how Professor Trelawney shows up in the Harry Potter series. According to Exekiles, Cassandra promised Apollo favors, but after receiving the gift went back on her word and refused Apollo. Since the enraged Apollo could not revoke a divine power, he added a curse that no one would believe her prophecies. And this is pulled from the Wikipedia page on Cassandra. Her cursed gift from Apollo became an endless pain and frustration to her. She was seen as a liar and mad woman by her family and by the Trojan people. Because of this, her father, Priam, had locked her away in a chamber and guarded her like the mad woman she was believed to be. Though Cassandra made many predictions that went unbelieved, the one prophecy that was believed was that of Paris being her abandoned brother. And within this, so again, this is still from the Wikipedia page on Cassandra and what we know about the history of Cassandra in mythology. So he specifies that her madness is not the type that uses language to describe physical agony or other physical symptoms. Instead, she speaks disconnectedly, transcendent, in the grip of her psychic possession by Apollo. Witnessing past, future events, Shine says, she invokes the same awe, horror, and pity as do schizophrenics. Cassandra is one of those who often combine deep, true insight with utter helplessness and who retreat into madness. And again, these are all pulled from the Wikipedia page on mythology around Cassandra. And mostly we're just sort of extrapolating that in the Harry Potter series, perhaps Sybill Trelawney's great-great-grandmother that we know is a famous seer, Cassandra, is the name embodying a lot of these aspects of mythology around Cassandra. And Cassandra plays a role in the Trojan War. She's the sister of Paris and Hector, the Princess of Troy, and warns everyone of the Greek invasion, but she is ignored. When it looks as if the Greeks have left and the Trojan horse is brought into the city, she warns everyone that there are enemy soldiers hidden inside, and she continues to be ignored. So that is all kind of interesting history on like I said, the mythology around Cassandra, which is just like, again, sort of very interesting as we see how Sybill Trelawney is portrayed in the series. So the name Sybill, even, it's spelled differently in the book, at least in like the American edition of the book, it's Sybill. Whereas when we think about Sibyls in general, it's spelled differently, Sibyls. But if you don't know, the Sibyls were prophetesses or oracles in ancient Greece. So there are statues in the Temple of Zeus at Azonai believed to depict a Sybil. So I have an image that I can link. I'll link the whole Wikipedia page in the show notes. So the Sibyls prophesied at holy sites. So if you've ever heard of the Oracle of Delphi or Delphi, a Sybil at Delphi has been dated to as early as the 11th century BCE by Pausanias when he described local traditions in his writings from the 2nd century Common Era. At first, there appears to have only been a single Sybil, but by the 4th century BCE, there appear to have been at least 3 more, Pygerian, Etherian, and Hellespontine. By the 1st century BCE, there were at least 10 Sibyls located in Greece, Italy, Levant, and Asia Minor. And this is pulled from the Wikipedia page on Sybil. So the Sibylline books, which this one is spelled like it gets closer to her name, so Sibylline. Sibylline books were a collection of ancient Roman prophecies that were consulted in times of crisis. These books were considered to be a crucial resource for understanding the will of the gods and were believed to have been written by the Sibyls, again, female oracles who were said to have lived in various parts of the ancient world. All right, so that's all sort of history, again, on the name Cassandra, mythology around Cassandra that might relate to what we're supposed to extrapolate from the name in the Harry Potter books. And then we also have the Sibyls as being oracles. Historically, they were female oracles. They often were almost like how we might think of like nuns now, sort of, but differently, that they were often they were in temples, places where people would come to worship and learn from them. And like the Oracle of Delphi, or the Sybil there, is very famous. You can still go to the location, like the ruins of the in Delphi in Greece, where people would basically, what's the right word? Like pilgrimage to hear from the Sibyls at Delphi. Right, all of this is sort of interwoven into the idea of having, like someone that can see the future, of having seers, oracles, Sibyls. They're sort of all synonymous in this way. So let's get into... Now we're going to zoom in, right? We were in the zoom out right there, talking about historically. We're going to zoom in into the actual Harry Potter books and what's happening in the books. So we are introduced to divination in the books in the 3rd year of Harry Potter. When he enters his 3rd year, it's subject. They start then. It seems like it's mandatory in the 3rd year, and students study a myriad of ways to scry information about the future. And what's talked about is like looking at tea leaves, crystal balls, visions, astrology, and horoscope charts. They also are talked about later, looking at smoke patterns, dreams, tarot cards, and interpretation of prophecies, though the latter is quite rare. Guides and textbooks allowed students of divination to discern or translate what observed symbols intended to mean. So that is sort of how they're described in the book series as to what the subject of divination is, and this is pulled from the harrypotter.fandom.com wiki on divination. So within that, again, in the 3rd year, Harry enters. The textbook that they've used, that they are required to have for class, is Unfogging the Future by Cassandra Blavatsky. So again, potentially this is Sybill Trelawney's great-great-grandmother who wrote this book. We don't totally know, but it's just interesting that she has the same first name. What she sort of introduces is tessiomancy, which is reading tea leaves, looking at fire omens, or pyromancy, talking about palmistry, or reading like the palm of your hand, and then crystal gazing. So those are the ones that were sort of present in the third year in the Harry Potter series. In the fourth year, it's said that they learn astrology. In the fifth year, they use the book The Dream Oracle by Inigo Imago, which is dream interpretation. So we sort of know that all of those things the students in the classes are learning. We see, I'll talk a little bit more about it in a moment, but we see Ron and Harry do a lot of faking or making up when they have homework for divination class. But I'll talk more about that because it's pretty interesting as well as to what they come up with and whether it comes true or not. So again, if we're trying to write this whole season is about divination. Tarot or cartomancy is a type of divination. So really we only get like a few instances or references to tarot specifically. So when Harry, Ron, and Hermione arrive in the divination classroom for their first ever lesson, they talk about the shelves lining the walls were stuffed with packs of worn playing cards and other items, most likely referring to tarot cards, maybe not, but even when we think about tarot was often, like, originally was based off of a traditional, like, card game deck of cards, the one that you would play other card games with, and then sort of became this way of using that for divination. When Harry, I believe it's in the sixth book, but we get Harry's going down a corridor when Sybill Trelawney comes around the corner. She's shuffling through and reading a deck of playing cards as she walks. Harry ducks behind a statue because he doesn't want her to see him. But when Trelawney comes to the Knave of Spades, so that would be like the Knight of Spades, I think. So that would be like the Jack of Spades if you had, again, a traditional playing deck. So that is seemingly what she's using at that point. And then she says, she's like kind of rambling, but she says, a dark young man, possibly troubled, one who dislikes the questioner. And she's kind of just talking to herself, and she stops like right in front of where Harry is, but she can't see him. And she quickly convinces herself this reading must be incorrect, and she continues on her way. So that's, potentially she's talking about him, potentially she's talking about someone else. And then the following year, so I guess that probably would have been in book 5. In book 6, the night that Dumbledore dies, spoiler alert, at the end of the 6th book, Harry again encounters Trelawney in the corridor. She tells him she had done several tarot readings, drawing the lightning-struck tower every time, an extremely ill omen. She also remarked that Ferenzi, she had consulted about this portent, knew nothing of cartomancy. So again, she is directly referencing the tower card in tarot and cartomancy or tarot itself. So those are really the only specific mentions of tarot that we get in the books, but I just wanted to point those out. And again, it seems like they're sort of all true when she does use tarot. So yeah, let's get into these other aspects of prophecy or other divination being true in the books. So when Harry and Ron make their predictions in their divination homework, this is in the Goblet of Fire in the 4th book. It's sort of right before the Triwizard Tournament happens. They're having to, yeah, so this is right before the Triwizard Tournament, but they don't totally know like what's going to happen there. And so the things that they predict, that they sort of say that they're just making up, right? They say he will be in danger of burns. which potentially is related to the first task of overcoming a dragon. He will lose a treasured possession, Ron being his best friend, whom he had to recover from the mer people in the second task. And then he will get stabbed in the back by someone you thought was a friend, probably Professor Moody, his Defense Against the Dark Arts professor, who was not actually Professor Moody, but was Barty Crouch Jr. And then finally, he will come off worse in a fight where if he had his duel with Lord Voldemort in the Little Hangleton Graveyard at sort of the end of the maze, the third task where he gets transported there, those things all come true. And again, sort of things that they sort of flippantly say that they're making up. Other predictions that Ron and Harry foresee, they say that Harry will lose his bet, that Ron will win his fight, which he supposedly came off worse in. This also pretty much comes true, more or less, again, with respect to the Triwizard Tournament, as it's later revealed that Ludo Bagman lost his bet that Harry would win the Triwizard Tournament outright, which culminated in Harry coming off worse. They also claim they will drown, which nearly happens in the second task to both of them. And this sort of makes me, like, sort of come with the conclusions from divination in the books that, given everything, these sort of predictions that are made flippantly that Harry and Ron say that they're just making up. We have the two sort of like real prophecies that we know that Professor Trelawney gives when she's in this trance state. One to Albus Dumbledore, right before Voldemort tries to go and kill baby Harry, kicking off the series. And then also in Goblet of Fire in the fourth book, before Voldemort comes back to power, Harry's in Trelawney's office and she drops into this trance state when he's the only one there and predicts, or it sort of has this prophecy that the Dark Lord is coming back and he will have, let me go find the whole phrase. Okay, so it is not in Goblet of Fire. It's in Prisoner of Azkaban, which makes sense because it's more about Pettigrew. And so what she says, she goes into a trance and says, and this is during Harry's divination final, so he's the only one there with her. It will happen tonight. The Dark Lord lies alone and friendless, abandoned by his followers. His servant has been chained these 12 years. Tonight, before midnight, the servant will break free and set out to rejoin his master. The Dark Lord will rise again with his servant's aid, greater and more terrible than ever he was. Tonight, before midnight, the servant will set out to rejoin his master. All right, so that is the other sort of prophecy that we know comes true. But yeah, basically, like, it does seem that a lot of the predictions that happen in the book come true, even though Professor Trelawney is seen as a fraud, belittled by a lot of people like Ron, Harry, Hermione, a lot of the other students, professors. Like Dumbledore states that when he was interviewing Trelawney, which is when he hears the first prophecy from her, or the first that we know of about Harry, that ends up being about Harry, that he was debating about even continuing the subject at the school, so he clearly doesn't, think it's super useful. That, like, with her, that she does have a gift, but again, in the book, she's very much belittled, or everyone just thinks she's a fake. That maybe there is this aspect of, like, true talent does not lie in making accurate predictions, but in recognizing that they have been made. Because again, we see that she says other things that don't come true. She, like people in the books joke that she says the student's going to die, predicts the student's death every year, and then it doesn't happen. I think a lot of the things when it comes to Harry, like, we do see is coming more true. But again, and I think that this is like sort of the plight of fortune tellers or diviners, especially in like our modern time or pop culture, that there is this like idea that, oh, if people can see the future, that's very scary, that no one should be able to do that, that and like therefore that like there's a lot of desire to say, oh, it's not true, they're a fraud, or again, even like they're scamming people, or like making money right off of people's like emotional states or hard times, and it really does this like very large disservice to what I would say, right, is like the magical community. And again, it's like so ironic that in the Harry Potter books, like they literally go to a school of magic where you can learn charms, you can transfigure people into animals, you can do healing magic, you can do like teleportation, basically. You can travel in people's memories, you can, like, there's so many incredible, you can make potions that do all these different things, like love potions and stuff, and like all of that can be true. And then like this idea that you're going to predict the future is like, oh man, no, that's crazy. And so I just, yeah, that's part of why I wanted to make this episode talk about Trelawney. And then next episode, I'm going to talk a lot about like this sort of like trauma in my perspective that comes about when I would say like villainize intuition or these sort of potentially like magical gifts, and what that does to people's mental health and like being able to trust yourself. And even if you don't know why you feel a certain way, like the vibes are off, like a lot of us, in particular women, have been taught to like turn that off, like to ignore it, that if it can't be proven in hard science, I'm using air quotes here, that like it's not real and it's ridiculous and what are you thinking or doing. Even like the idea of like a mother's intuition, right? It's not like a father's intuition. That's not like, it's always this sort of like feminized trait, and therefore often like villainized trait, because I think again people think that if it's true, okay, if people can really do that, that's terrifying. And yeah, as we go throughout the season, I'm going to be sort of playing with this idea that like divination, right, can sort of have this way potentially of predicting the future or pulling things out of our like imagery we see, or pulling tarot cards or reading people's palms or tea leaves or other levels of divination are all like sort of different ways to try to, I would say, like tune in or channel or into something, I don't know, the divine or the universe, or to sort of try to understand how, I would say, like patterns play out or things might play out. But I also think that, and I'll keep talking about this, that it's important in my sort of like understanding or worldview on the future and like predicting the future, is that like the future can still be changed. And again, I think that like is reflected back in the Harry Potter series, because we see that when they do time travel, again, another thing that's like very magical that they can do in the series, that Dumbledore cautions them that like, okay, only change these like one or two things, right? Try to save these people's lives, or, creatures' lives, beings' lives. Because if you try to change anything else, or if you don't sort of like go along with what was originally happening, you don't know what sort of outcome it will have in the future. Again, if you've ever watched Back to the Future or things like that, there is this level of like, okay, you can change things, like butterfly effect, like you don't know what small action is going to change the future. But also that like in often how it's portrayed is that, okay, if you do change it, then it will be as it always was going to be. Like there is this like circular level, which is why time travel and like the future is all very like complicated when it comes to like fictionalized stories, because you have to sort of like set the worldview that you're creating in it as to, okay, can you change the future, or was it always going to be that way and you didn't think it was, but then like it is inevitable? Anyway, I'll stop getting into this sort of more esoteric level of things, but yeah, it's very interesting talking about Trelawney, because again, I think even in the Harry Potter fandom, like, she's still kind of belittled, like, she's seen as, I know that, like, really, like, Harry Potter as a character doesn't really like her. I mean, probably because she's, like, predicting his death all the time, or all these grim things that are going to happen to him. But of course, like, he does have a very challenging existence as a child before he even gets to Hogwarts, being abused and neglected and like not told about his birth parents or this whole world that he is a part of. Like, all of that is cut off from him. And also, and then like throughout the Harry Potter series, he's still very much this like, he is on his hero's journey. He is the chosen one. He is, like in so many stories, like, has to go through many trials and tribulations to reach this saving the world aspect of the series that is also very common in our sort of like fictional fantasy worlds. But that's a lot of pressure on a literal child. Anyway, let's get into some of the tarot cards that I thought aligned with Professor Trelawney and just like her journey as we see it in the books. Because again, she talks about the Tower card, so I did pull that one. I didn't pull the Jack of Spades, which I'm trying to remember. What spades and tarot? Would they be like the pentacles? No. Swords. Okay. Spades would be swords, so that would be like the Jack, King, Queen. So it'd be like the Knight of Swords. If we were going to do that one. But anyway, so I pulled the Three of Swords, I pulled the Tower, I pulled the Three of Wands, and I pulled the Magician. And again, I sort of see these as like a storyline that we have going through here. So we sort of start with, I would say, sort of the Three of Swords here, that like our heartbreak card. Mostly because I think there's this level of like Trelawney is sort of, I don't know, heartbroken at her own, what she thinks is inability to, what would be the right word, like follow in her family's footsteps, like have this generational like gift or power or magic. There's this like, she's trying to persevere, but everyone really doesn't really think very highly of her. And also that like in the series, right, we also see that Harry's going through a lot of like pain and tragedy. And so I think that was very emblematic of this card. So I pulled from the Desert Illuminations Tarot deck by Lindsay D. Williams. So in this one, the Three of Swords becomes the Three of Daggers, and it says, a sacred heart is suspended in a desert rainstorm. Three daggers are piercing through the heart in multiple directions. The heart is on fire, with a rose blooming out from the center, which symbolizes perseverance through pain and tragedy. No storm or rain can put out the flames that ignite the passion of the soul. This is the heartbreak card. In life, we experience this card repeatedly in different ways, such as trauma, sadness, guilt, remorse, and shame. All these types of different emotions can take a toll on your well-being. It's important to find healthy ways to remove these daggers from your soul, one blade at a time. As each one is removed, the heart will slowly heal itself, and you will be able to transition out of the sadness and pain little by little. So right, we have to sort of remove the pain, sort of process our grief, the things we've been through, the trauma, in order to transition out of that place. And I think, again, this is very much like Trelawney doesn't really believe in herself at all. Everyone thinks she's a fraud. She's going through a lot. Again, like Harry starts divination in year 3, and that's also when she makes the first prophecy that we know of at that time in the series about the Dark Lord Voldemort coming back, and that Peter Pettigrew is going to go back to his master and go to serve him and all of this, or Bertie Crouch Jr. It's not totally clear as to like who the prophecy is about, because again, we don't really get, it seems like with the prophecies, there isn't this level of like, yep, check, like it happened. Like we mostly know about the prophecies because either someone was there when it happened, or because we know about the Hall of Prophecy, where all of these prophecies are recorded in these like orbs, like a database, where seemingly someone studies them or catalogs them or does something. And we know that because Voldemort sort of followed through with the prophecy that could have been about Harry, it then becomes about Harry because Voldemort gives him the power by trying to kill him. This is that circular aspect I was talking about. Okay, so then we get into the tower. And I feel like, again, this is sort of, I mean, I pulled it because the tower's talked about in the series. We get like the literal tower of the astronomy tower that Dumbledore gets, blasted off of. In here, it says the tower is associated with the planet of Mars. Mars is the god of war. The element of air, again, tower, it's all the way up in the air. And then the crown chakra. And often the tower sort of has this like crown aspect to the top of it, at least in the tarot decks. It says the bell tower of a Spanish mission has been struck by lightning as invading cowboys plummet to their doom. An unexpected moment of bad luck has foiled their plan of attack. Chaos, change, and sudden upheaval are present when this card appears. Perhaps you are feeling safe and comfortable. This card is letting you know that things are about to get shaken up and the universe is starting to rear its head. You can be overcome by a whirlwind of instability, but in the end, you will come out on the other side stronger than ever before, or even with a new set of beliefs. So yeah, generally the tower is like upheaval, transformation, or, you know, sometimes chaos, and then again with like the idea that it gets transmuted into something else. Again, if you think of how lightning works, it's very violent as it strikes and it sort of like ripples out, or it can sometimes change the chemistry of something that it hits, depending on what it does. And it leaves a mark in a lot of ways, but also it can transform a tree into a fire or into ash or into, it can have a scar or all these different things. So there is this sort of like traumatic aspect of it, which again, if we think about the Three of Swords, we have this, yes, the trauma happened and we have to kind of process it to move forward. So yeah, I think of the tower because it comes up in the series, and also just because there's a lot of tower moments, I would say, in Trelawney's life during the Harry Potter series that we see in the books. And I wish that she sort of had more of a tower moment in that she gets some healing. I don't really know if that ever happens to her, at least not that we see in the books. We know that she uses alcohol to cope a lot of the time because we see a lot of evidence of her hiding bottles of sherry and kind of being on her own and being very lonely and feeling like no one believes in her. She gets fired from her job and then she just has to live at the school. I don't know what she really does during that time. I think later on she gets to share divination classes with Ferenz, the centaur. So maybe they each teach half the school or half the students. But for a while she's unemployed. No one thinks she's anything to talk about. She doesn't really seem to have any friends. None of the other professors are very nice to her. Or again, we mostly just see McGonagall thinking not very highly of her. We see Umbridge being the one that fires her. Like, she goes through a rough time. And again, like, she makes these predictions that, like, or prophecies that, like, change the whole wizarding world. And I don't know if she ever finds out. Like, this is what I'm going to talk about next episode, but I'm just like, Dumbledore, why didn't you tell her? Like, maybe, I guess Dumbledore never told her because he died before Voldemort was killed. Harry, did you tell her? Were you like, knock, knock, like, hey, like, you made real predictions. They changed the whole trajectory of the wizarding world, partially because of me and partially because of, these things that happened. And, like, I wanted to let you know that you're for real, even if you don't remember it. You don't remember when you're channeling or whatever it is, getting these messages from the universe or from the divine or whatever, like having these prophecies, these Sibyls, these oracles. There is sort of almost always this level of hatred by the community, at least in kind of like our current times. I think oracles used to be when they were in these sort of like temples and things like that, like when we had different belief systems and paganism and different, like, worshipped different gods, and there were different temples to different gods, which was also in the same kind of like era, that there was a different kind of respect for people that could potentially see the future, see what was coming, especially when we didn't have a lot of other ways to do so. We didn't have social media. We didn't have a lot of the like science that we utilize today to be able to track things or understand more about history, where there was just a lot of that seems like it was lost. And again, I'm like, what? Did anyone ever tell Trelawney? Okay, so let's move into the other two cards I pulled. So I pulled the Three of Wands, which in this deck is called the Three of Chilies. It says, a woman in a gorgeous woven blanket looks beyond an adobe archway decorated with chili ristres. She's looking ahead at all the challenges and opportunities beyond the New Mexico blue skies. She is about to step through the archway into the unknown. Stability and grounded energy are within you as you plan for the future. Everything is well underway, and you are operating from a place of familiarity and comfort, which makes it easy to proceed through the door. If you love travel, this card symbolizes the energy needed before taking or planning a big trip. Of course, leaving home can be scary and also very stressful. Your grounded and stable energy will help you set off on the right foot for your journey with confidence and an open mind. Yeah, so like this, this is what I like hope for Trelawney, is that like what we see in this card is like the back of this person as they walk through like a literal doorway, like an archway. And I'm like, yeah, girl, like I hope you get to like walk through this portal into this like new world where you either believe in yourself or you've sort of like moved on from trying to teach other people about how to be an oracle or have the sight or what that means. Because I think the other question sort of, and this is kind of a question throughout the series, is like, can it really be taught? We see that when Ferenz comes, the centaur, to teach the students, he sort of tells them like, I'm going to tell you about how astrology works, like about what the centaurs do and how they read the future in the stars. But he doesn't really like, he's like, yeah, it might not make sense to you, or like the trajectory is long, like it takes a lot of time and energy and things to plot things, and a lot of the time you're just marking what happens, which again sort of seems like with the prophecies, like they mark the prophecy was made, and then there sort of has to be this like, okay, well then do people come back in and like look at the records and like write what actually happened? Seemingly so, because we see that when Harry goes to the Hall of Prophecy and gets the literal orb that holds the memory of his prophecy, it says about Harry Potter on it, which, as they talk about in the books, like it wasn't necessarily about Harry. It could have been him or Neville. But because Voldemort chose Harry and tried to kill him, then it was sort of made clear that, like, okay, well, Voldemort chose Harry, so therefore Harry is now gonna be the one that potentially has the power to vanquish the Dark Lord. And so there again is this sort of like circular component to, like, well, the prophecy was said it was going to be this way, and then Voldemort decided that, like, it would be Harry, so therefore, like, he was the one that got the power to vanquish the Dark Lord, even though that's what he was trying to prevent from happening. Okay, so yeah, I'm hopeful that in my canon, in my fanfic head, I'm like, Trelawney, like, get out of there, go, like, find your magical community. Maybe you just, like, go off into the woods. Maybe you go, like, learn some astrology, go hang out with the centaurs. Like, who are other people, magical beings that, like, do sort of want to be in this world of prediction and prophecy and all this different kind of divination. Like, she wants to teach about it, and that's one thing, but it seems like she's not necessarily great at that. And she loves the idea, or, like, she loves the predicting part, it seems, because she does do that in the books, where I'm like, yeah, go, like, do some research, go, like, again, go commune and, like, have some prophecies or know what's going on. Like, that would be my hope for her, is that she gets to, like, travel and, like, plan things, she gets to do new things, and she doesn't have to try to teach 12-year-old kids about divination if that's not, like, her super meaningful life. And then finally I pulled the Magician, because again, I feel like if this is sort of like what I would hope for Trelawney, is that, like, she could get to this place where, and on this card, the Magician is like it's an alien. It's beamed its way down from the heavens onto Earth. They're known for using their powers from the solar energies of the heavens to help manifest reality on Earth. They are the entity of creation. The Magician represents the connection between the spiritual realm and the material world. They have all the tools necessary to convert energy and intention into matter. The Magician is here to remind you that we are the masters of our own reality, and that anything is possible when you have all necessary elements and spiritual tools. Like, again, this is what I would hope for Trelawney, is that she could come into this place where she sees herself as magical and as a manifestor, or as, like, an oracle, and that she gets to embody that, and again, like, either be in a community that's supportive of that, or just know for herself that, like, yeah, it's true, it's okay if other people don't believe me. Like, if it didn't bother her, that would be one thing, but I would say, because of what we see from, like, the alcohol use in the series, like, she doesn't seem to just be, like, over it. It seems to greatly impact her that people don't think that, like, she's legit, that she is a fraud. And so I would hope for her that she gets to kind of, again, where's her coven? Like, who are her people? Where are they? And maybe she gets to go find them, or again, or be out in the desert and commune on her own. But I would hope that, again, she gets to, like, actually recognize this part of herself in the future, and not just be dragged down by others that don't believe in her. All right, so let's dive in and see what the cards have to say today. So what message does Trelawney have for us? I'm going to pull from the Herb Crafter's Tarot, because, actually, no, I'm going to pull from the Goddess of Love deck, because I thought about this earlier. And I feel like Trelawney needs some, like, self-love in her life. She needs... Again, she needs to find her goddess culture. She needs to find her coven. She needs to find her people. And I feel like sometimes, right, like, loving yourself can kind of be, like, the first way to do that. To be in communion with yourself, to be in community with yourself, and to not just always be trying to, like, be someone else, or, right, like, predict what other people want, or this or that. Interesting. Okay, I got the Queen of Wands reversed, so she's struggling, that's what I'm saying, but let's see what message she has. Wands, yeah, Wands. Okay. So I'm just read the reversal probably. It says, when this card shows up reversed, reattune to the chaotic, erotic feminine, okay, to the potency of sexuality within you. Go inward to see what forces are pushing and pulling and to determine if this is the time to share them or keep cultivating them solo. This is what I was just talking about with Trelawney, where I'm like, girl, you can work with this power. Like, you don't need to have, like, if you want to find your community, you can do that, or you can share what you learn or the prophecies, but you can also cultivate them on your own and know that they are true or know that they are important for your life. And you don't have to like get buy-in from other people. So the affirmation here says, I'm a flame with my passions. I'm an emblem and a vessel for unconditional love and lust. And the journal question says, how can I embrace my sexuality as something I am loyal to within myself? So yeah, and I really feel this for Trelawney, like, how can she be loyal, like, to herself? So how can we also, center the things that we need, take care of ourselves, not just by doing the like maintenance things, but also like filling our cup spiritually, sexually, emotionally, all of those things to like have this place to pull from. And again, whether that's just for yourself and your own like interest and self-growth, or whether that's to like share with other people. All right. So if you'd like to join me on the journey of using the tarot for transformation, you can click on the link in the show notes to indicate your interest in getting more info. We'll be working together for 12 weeks of calls and journaling to discover what happens when we want to transform our lives through the tarot. Again, I'm like, Trelawney, you should join us, okay? This is what you need, girl. Links for the tarot decks will always be in the show notes and on my website if you'd like to look at them or purchase them. And thanks for joining me today on Everyday Tarot. Just as a reminder, the podcast comes out daily, Monday through Friday for all of 2025. You can email me, me@CamilleASaunders.com with your thoughts, questions, and more. All right, see you soon. Bye-bye.